Hey, it's me again, your guide of light, trying to help us all make it back to the light. And I have to share about this little boy that is in my care. And today I have 16 of them. A few of them very mouthy, combative, competitive. So they take a game that's supposed to be fun and they just kill all the fun because they're cheating basically, but calling everybody else cheaters. So anyways, there's this one kid that's very quiet and plays very well by himself. This is when the mouthy ones are not there. And when they are there, he tends to flock to them. And I see it as the outsider that hangs out with the bullies so he's not bullied. Don't be that person in life. Don't hang out with the bad guy just because you don't want the bad guy to attack you. Because essentially that is overlooking the truth. You're empowering the bully by saying, well, I don't want you to hurt me, so hey, can I be your friend? And these are kids. I'm watching them at an early age learning that if you go to the ones that are going to hurt you, they won't hurt you. But that right there is a mental mindset, especially as you get older. Because as I've taught my children, you can have friends that will throw you under the bus in a heartbeat. They can destroy your life because you're hanging out with people that are making bad choices. And you just kind of hang out with them because you don't want to be affected by them. So my kids actually just keep to themselves because they try to hang out with people and they're like, I don't really care the way that they think, the way that they act, what they talk about. There's kids that vape and do drugs and my kids don't want to be around that, which is admirable because at their age, I wasn't making intelligent choices that were going to further my life. It took me many years to get to a point. Actually, it was having them that made me go, wait, it's time to kind of grow up, and I think we forget growing up is not something that just happens. You don't go from 17 to 18 and then the law says you're grown. That's not how life works. There's people that are 85 years old that still are not mature. And it's a matter of being able to look at the world, respect everyone around you, having boundaries, valuing yourself, making situations for yourself that are going to benefit your own personal growth, having time for yourself. A lot of these things affect people in a negative light to where they're like, I don't want to be alone. Because when you're alone, I've said this before, the only thing you can focus on is yourself or all the negative things that kind of pushed you to be alone. But a lot of time when you're being pushed to be alone, that spirit waking you up, that spirit saying, hey, there's something better for you. I can show you, but I'm going to need you to get away from everything, those bullies, that toxic nature, the things that are leading you down that dark path, that then you find yourself in a horror story. And someone even said earlier on a comment that they left, and my heart goes out to you because I remember when I woke up and I realized that life was a horror story. Nothing made me happy anymore. And it's hard because when you start waking up on a spiritual level, yes, you realize that you're in the devil's den, and then all of a sudden you realize all the people you've entertained, friends, family, mentors, whatever it was, they weren't necessarily up to par with who you're trying to be. And it's always okay to, I won't even say switch sides, but take your own side, to understand your own value, to build yourself up. And as you do this, people are going to sit there and go, you've changed. Yes. Doesn't a seed change into a little bud? And then the little bud begins to grow, and then you can finally see what it's going to be. Small seeds can become big trees. Big trees have deep roots. Deep roots are the things that plant us in a place that make that our foundation. But it's those big trees that don't get blown over by a little something that's going to knock you off your path. Yes, the little seed can be taken and pulled right up and never be planted, but that's the toxicity of life. When you let others begin to tell you who you are, what you should believe in, what you should work for, who you should hang out with. And I'm not talking to parents guiding their children. There's a difference. As parents, it is our duty to be those guardians that direct them, because we should have higher intuition of understanding what our children are walking into. You don't take them to the zoo and say, oh yeah, go play with the lions when the petting zoo is over there. You don't break the rules to show them that they're big and bad, because all you're doing is misleading them. And I keep noticing It's funny, I keep having all these things pop up of Karen videos, and I'm just like, oh my God, what's wrong with the world? And a lot of it is just sheer entitlement, misdirection, misunderstandings, lack of communication, bullies taking over, children that are in fear of being picked on because to them that's a life or death situation. And I even had one kid today, he's one of my troublemakers. Other kids had to come and say, we've asked him to stop and he's not stopping. It was 2 of them. And we all sat down last week and made rules together. And he was breaking the rules. Stop means stop. Quit doing what you're doing. And as I went to talk to him, all he did was cover his eyes, and I could tell him, I can tell you're getting upset right now. And his fists began to ball, just ball up, and it started shaking. And I said, look, you're getting to a point where you're overreacting to a situation. You are being asked to correct your behavior. That's it. Take accountability for what you're doing, change it, and move on with the day. No need to get upset. And in the end, it was so-and-so said this about my sister. I don't even remember what they said, but they said something and it made me mad. Obviously, it wasn't that important because it wasn't even recalled what was said. Then the other person that came and told on them said, well, so-and-so said this morning and you didn't get upset. And then I had to point out to the one that's getting angry, you even say these things to them. And I was like, you kids sit here, you take life so personal. If you can stop taking life so personal, you won't be so angry. Because honestly, back in the 90s, we used to dog on each other. That was the highlight of our day. That you knew who your friends were by the way you could roast one another, right? And still come together and still hang out and just get a laugh out of it, not take it personal. They weren't defining you. You were passing time by shooting the shit. What happened to those days? What happened to the days when we weren't in competition of sitting here saying, I'm better than you. I have more money than you. I have a nicer car than you. I have a nicer house than you. Oh, I don't want to hang out with you because you hang out with so-and-so. Like somehow we ended up back in high school. Or some people never graduated. I'm not sure what the situation is. But a lot of people need to invest in their personal growth. And it's something that's hard to do when you surround yourself with outside people that you don't want to judge you or pick on you. Because even as adults, we deal with bullying. We don't call it that. We call it sexual harassment or just pure out harassment. You know, that we're being followed and whatever it is. It's the extreme of bullying. But for some reason, people seem to think that as adults, we're not human. We don't have the same emotions. We don't tend to go through the same process of feelings and thinking. If you look at your children, the way that they behave and the way that they act, you can actually find what you're going through by looking at them and talking to them. I figured out a long time ago that what my kids were expressing to me was something I had shown them. And that's hard. We call that the cycle of life, right? And it's like I'm watching my daughter right now go through the process of going from being a child that did not have to make choices, that had to be told what to do, to this young pre-womanhood stage, and then having to get ready to phew into adulthood and then make all her own choices. And that's where life is very vulnerable, when we have to allow our children to start making their own choices and stand back and go, consequences are yours. You can make whatever choice you want to make, but there's always repercussions to your actions. And I think that we forget that, and we forget to teach our children this. And my nephew used to say, I want to skip school, I want to do this and that. And I told him, I said, you can do whatever you want to do. But when you fail, that's on you. When you get caught, don't cry about the punishment. Because every choice has that reaction that occurs to that choice. That is the motion of life. You might not get caught the first time. You might not even get caught the 100th time. But at some point, what happens in the dark will come to light. And we all have to get back on that foot of understanding that when we tolerate certain behaviors, we're empowering them. We're giving them our power by simply not speaking up. And working with these kids has allowed me to start putting the pieces together between childhood and adulthood and kind of where the flaw is in the system. And it's early on, these kids are being taught, well, just mind your own business, don't do this, don't do that. Where I'm over there teaching them the old mindset stand up for those that appear weaker than you. And that doesn't mean in a hostile manner. The more that you can speak in a more positive mindset, something that directs people away from that and the wanted to punch and kick and fight. When you can be the peacekeeper, you can actually start seeing that people will change. And it's a matter of not stepping into the gossip, stepping into the tearing someone down because you're having a bad day. If you're having a bad day, go sit somewhere. And I even had to tell the little boy that was balling it up. And I said, if you're upset right now, it is okay to remove yourself. Go calm down, breathe. And then you can always come back. It doesn't mean that you're being excluded from the situation or I'm telling you that you're being punished. I'm asking you to make the right choice right now. Because as I told them, there's actually 17 of them. They were loud and screaming, and I had to say, hey, there are 17 of y'all here today. I do not want to talk like this all day long. I do not need to scream at you to get your attention. And they began to calm themselves down. But it also comes to when there's rules of life. They want them to apply to somebody else, but not themselves. That's hypocrisy. And that's adults to children. Do as I say, not as I do. I never raised my children like that. Because if you are a hypocrite right off the bat, you've lost trust. If you don't have your children's trust, you've taught them to think that everybody is a villain in society. I got to a point like that in my toxic relationship I was in, looking at the world thinking everybody wanted something from me, everybody was going to use me, everybody was going to abuse me in some way. And it took a long time for me to start tearing down those layers going, not everybody is the same. And I have to be vulnerable. And that is scary as all get out when you have to push yourself. It's like you're afraid of heights and then you're going to the Eiffel Tower by scaling the side of it, right? You panic attacks, anxiety, things you can't control. And a lot of people can't even tell when you're going through that. I have learned to conceal my feelings so much, people can't tell when I'm shaking and quaking inside. To where it finally got to a point where I could just breathe and calm myself down and say there's nobody that is that powerful that can affect me in such a way that it destroys me or makes me feel weak. Because like I said, once you've walked with the devil, once you've danced with the devil, you better learn to take the lead. Because if not, the devil's going to march you right back into his territory, into his camp. And then all of a sudden, all you've done is go right back where you started. It's a toxic cycle. At what point do you find the courage to go, oh, there's a new path. I can go somewhere else. I can make a better choice. And yes, by getting off of this toxic cycle, you will find yourself alone before you move on. And it's okay because as you're moving on, you'll find that you attract other partners walking with you. And before you know it, you're coming to a land of individuals you didn't know existed. All because you had the faith to be alone and say, I deserve better than that. But until you can tell yourself, I deserve better than that, you will not see better than that. And it took me a long time because as I was alone at first, I was lonely. And I couldn't see why I was being shunned or ostracized from everyone that I knew. It hurt. It broke my heart little bits more and more. And a heart that was already so wounded, I kind of just laid down. I stopped eating. I didn't want to work. I didn't want to take care of my kids. I didn't want to communicate with people. I could not make eye contact. I was sweating. And I'm talking about the stress sweat. I don't know if anybody's endured that, but a stench comes off of you that is repulsive. And it's because there's so much toxicity flowing through your blood that you hear all those voices. You have people telling you certain things that just make you shut down because you're afraid to get off the wheel because it's like we're born on it. And of course, we're born into a toxic world because that's what we've allowed it to become. So as you're having to let go of those family and friends, you're going to be walking through a nightmare. You wake up and realize you're in hell. But when you wake up and realize in hell, then you realize there's another option. There, you don't have to stay there. The only way you can stay there is if you choose to stay there. So I'm hoping that everyone will start finding the courage to go, I'm going to make the choice. And I've told you time and time again, I'm here when you find the courage to make a choice. Like I said, I opened up the Facebook page. I don't really even go on Facebook, but I tried to find a way for all of us to begin to communicate, to have these threads, to talk to one another, to help one another, to keep healing and moving forward. And it's the same as this channel, Hearts Healing Forward. Because we have to heal our hearts to move forward. That's why I picked the name. Because you can go on in life with a broken heart, but you're going to keep staying on the toxic cycle, because when your heart is broken, you have not forgiven that which has wounded you. You're not broken. You might feel lost. You might feel confused. You might feel hopeless. But the fact that you still get up every day shows that you are a lot stronger than what you can imagine. And when you start to find that strength again, it's like going to the gym and adding extra weights and you're like, yeah, I made an achievement. I stepped it up a notch. And it's the same thing with healing. Even if you're taking one small step a month, you're making progress. I was at a point in the very beginning. Everyone said one step at a time. And I was like, it's not. It's one breath at a time. I was so overwhelmed with everything. It was almost like shell shock and a cultural difference, because when you live in a toxic life and then you come into what seems like it's a healthier life, but it might not actually be a healthy life, you start really getting confused and pulled different directions, and you're like, I don't know how to make sense of this. And the only way to make sense of it is to walk off and go to prayer, meditation, whatever you're comfortable calling it. But it is finding the silence within yourself to hear the silence speak to you. And when you get to that point, that's when you start truly healing and being able to find the courage to believe in yourself. Taking away those barriers left and right, saying nothing's going to stop me. I am invincible. Because really you are. Your energy, your spirit will always prevail. Maybe not in the same form in which you're in, but the one thing about energy is it cannot be created and it cannot be destroyed. It can only be converted. So if you can understand that you are an energetic being with a spiritual existence in a human form, all those variables allow you to be exactly what you are. An individual that can feel, that can move around, that can think, that can create, that can destroy, alter, change. But you have to start understanding the power within you. When you can get that power back, all of a sudden the magic of life comes back. The horror story becomes more of like a dramedy to where you're like, that ain't even real. I used to not be able, I still don't like horror shows, but I used to not be able to watch them because the way that they impacted me, it felt too real for me. Because my mindset was, if it's being shown, somebody's had that thought. And if people can think like that, that's sadistic, and I do not want to support that. And that always set me back. But then I had to learn about the theatrics of life. The scare. The things that made that blood start flowing, the adrenaline pumping. Oh, I feel alive. And then I began to understand why people thought like that. Yes, because possibly they had darkness in their minds, but who doesn't? Who doesn't get hurt and sometimes like, if only. We're not perfect and we're not meant to be. The only thing you have to do is learn to control those emotions in a way where you don't lash out and hurt others. That's when you start doing wrong. Especially if you're hurting yourself. Because the one person you should respect, love, trust, take care of, it's yourself. You have to come first. If you don't come first, you're putting yourself last. If you're putting yourself last, you're not going to make it. You're going to become a doormat and be the person I was, wiping the mud off left and right. Like, I'm your doormat. Go ahead, as long as you feel good. And inside I was dying and crying. Don't do that to yourself. Do not be the person that destroys you, and do not give people the power to destroy you. Because there is a goddess within every one of us. It's that empowerment. So hopefully you can begin to recognize you have the ability to take the reins to your chariot, and it will take you wherever you can go. Only thing stopping you is your mind. Use your imagination. How far can you go? Sending you peace, love, and light. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.